Council District 11 Candidate Forum. Just a little quick housekeeping. There are restrooms in the back. Gentlemen, there's an additional men's room in the building right next door. If you have any questions, look back. Do you see Kristen there? She's our ombuds person. If you have any questions, she's the lady to ask. And with that, again, welcome.
Thank you, Pastor Polka, for your warm welcome and for allowing us to gather in your beautiful sanctuary for this important event. And welcome everyone to the Westside Regional Alliance of Councils CD11 Candidate Forum. WRAC, as we call it, is very proud to play a part in the democratic process by hosting this forum. And I want to thank all three candidates, Tracy Park, Faiza Malik, and Jeremy Weinberg, for being here this afternoon. To address voter questions and concerns. I also want to thank the many WRAC volunteers who have worked hard to organize this event, including Chris Spitz, Nico Ruderman, Jay Handel, and Steve Sand. And to Steve and Soroya Moss for serving as our timekeepers this afternoon. We are especially grateful that Josh Haskell of ABC7 has agreed to moderate this forum today. Josh has long covered important Westside news and is a veteran at moderating various events, including a previous CD11 candidate forum in the last election cycle. Thank you, Josh, for serving as our moderator this afternoon. Last but not least, I sincerely thank all the many forum attendees for coming out and participating in democracy on this beautiful Westside afternoon. It's great to see you all. I'd now like to introduce our Vice Chair, Chris Spitz, who will say a few more words about WRAC.
So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming out. For those who don't know, WRAC is a cooperative coalition of all 14 neighborhood and community councils. Here, let me just move in. On the west side of Los Angeles, including 7 councils located here in CD11. I have to emphasize right now that we're a nonpartisan group. We take no position on candidates for elected office. I'd like to take a moment just to introduce our WRAC reps for the 7 CD11 councils. They're here today. And now I would ask everybody in the front row who's representing a council in CD11, please stand up. So I'm not going to say an individual names, it'll take too much time. But just so you know, they represent Del Rey, Mar Vista, Pacific Palisades, that includes me, Venice, and that includes Nico, West LA Sawtelle, that includes Jay, where's Jay, and Westchester Playa, there you go. As you will hear a bit later, these 7 councils have each submitted a question, which our moderator, Josh, will first pose to the candidates. Our candidates did not receive any questions in advance. With that, I turn this over to Nico, who will go over the very important rules for this forum. Thank you, Nico.
So I've completely lost my voice, but I'm gonna do my best. I had more to say, but I'm gonna try and get through this. On behalf of the Westside Council WRAC and the Venice Neighborhood Council, I'd like to welcome you all to Venice. Really excited to have you all here. I'd like to welcome our candidates, and I hope this is a great debate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the rules for the audience, and then Josh is going to go over the rules for the debate and take it from there. So I'm just going to read these. These were all posted on the door on the way in, but these are expectations for the audience. This event is live streamed and recorded. Official video hosted on YouTube by the Venice First Lutheran Church and shared by WRAC. No independent filming, recording, or live streaming may take place. Still photography is allowed if not disruptive, and no audience video recording. We ask the audience to remain silent at all times. Only the moderator and the candidates may speak. And we ask you to remain seated at all times, of course, except for the people who are standing already. It's great to see so many people here. It's packed. This is wild. We're going to say, silence includes no cheering, booing, heckling, snapping, noise-making of any kind. We can applause at the beginning and at the conclusion. No signs or campaign materials inside the sanctuary. No distributing of materials inside this forum space. Out in that lounge, it can happen if anybody wants to. No profanity, harassment, or disruptive behavior. And violators will be immediately asked to leave. There will be no warning. This is your warning. And above it all, we are guests in this church, and it's a place of worship, so we just expect everybody to be respectful. And thank you so much. And Josh, take it from here. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for being here. This is an amazing turnout. My name's Josh Haskell. I'm a reporter with ABC 7 Eyewitness News. I've worked there for 8.5 years, covering all of Los Angeles, but of course, CD11 means a lot to me. I grew up in the district, my parents live in the district, and it's an honor to be here with all of you today. And I think that we all really appreciate all the volunteer work that went into today, and how engaged all you are as residents, because you all care so much about where you live. You want to improve your communities, and that happens with all of you in the audience volunteering and being engaged. So really looking forward to hearing from all of these candidates today, and again, really hoping that we can do so without any interruptions and really get to hear these platforms. And if there's anything at the end of this that you didn't know about the candidates, of course, they have websites. You can read more about their platforms there. I do want to thank, again, the First Lutheran Church of Venice for providing this wonderful venue, and of course, WRAC for hosting the event. Thanks also to WRAC Chair Robin Greenberg, Vice Chair Chris Spitz, the event committee, Jay Handel, Nico Rudderman, and the official timekeepers, of course, Steve Sand and Soraya Ross. As far as the format goes, the forum will last about 2 hours, following a 3-minute opening statement by each candidate. Through the first 30 minutes, I will ask questions from each of the 7 WRAC councils in CD11, which will, of course, cover a wide range of issues. Now, we will then take turns among the 3 candidates as to who gets to answer first, who goes second and third. Each candidate will have up to 1 minute to answer each question. And although I will have flexibility to ask follow-up questions or give the 3 candidates up to an additional 30 seconds if more clarity is needed, I may allow up to 30 seconds for a rebuttal if we feel the need for that. Now, after those 7 questions, I will ask questions that have submitted in writing by all of you. If you have a question you would like asked, you must print it legibly on a card that our event hosts have provided. These cards will be collected and reviewed, and then I will read the selected audience questions, and we will follow that same format. The number of questions asked will be, of course, dependent on how much time we have. Then we'll follow a brief lightning round of some fun questions for the candidates, and no, the candidates were not provided any of these questions in advance. Toward the end of our 2 hours, each candidate will have a 2-minute closing statement. Now, as Nico said, and as we are about to begin, want to make one of only 2 exceptions to our rule of absolute silence. Now and at the end of the forum, can you guys please welcome our 3 candidates with a round of applause? We of course have Councilwoman Tracy Park, Public Interest Attorney Faisa Malik, and entrepreneur Jeremy Weinberg. We all know it is not easy to run for office, so thank you all for being here today and taking our questions. So let's begin. We drew straws. We're going to start with opening statements. And Jeremy Weinberg, you're up first. Take it away.
Is this on? Is it on? Hello? Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, WRAC, for hosting, and Josh, thank you for moderating. My fellow West Siders, I'm not a politician. and I never thought I'd be standing or sitting on a stage like this. But on January 7th, I lost my home in the Palisades fire, and the worst part was knowing it was preventable. I started asking questions. I wrote a 120-page report that helped prove what the Department of Justice later confirmed. That fire had been burning for 6 days before it took our homes. The city knew. They did nothing. So I sprung into action, and what I discovered was a city council that failed its own people through bureaucracy, self-interest, and broken leadership. This is not just a Palisades problem. This is a whole West Side problem, and it affects all of us. I've been part of this community for 40 years. I'm an entrepreneur, 20 years building companies in music and entertainment. When something was broken, I didn't study it for years or argue about it in court. I built a solution. Since I announced, I've talked to neighbors on sidewalks in Westchester worried about the safety of their streets, in front of businesses on Lincoln fighting to keep their doors open, with homeowners in Mar Vista watching their costs of living climb and wondering how much longer they can hold on, with families in Brentwood who look at the hills behind them and fear they're next. And what I keep hearing everywhere is deep frustration and people feeling like nobody's listening. I'm not here for special interests. I'm not here to make this about left or right. I'm here for the nurses and the paramedics who take care of us but can't afford to live on the West Side. Our seniors who've built this community. Our veterans who've served this community. Our students, the future minds of this city. For the artists in Venice who made this community what it is and are being pushed out. I'm here for every local business and coffee shop we refuse to lose. And I'm here for Reagan, my sister's friend who was killed on her bike a few weeks ago in Playa del Rey, along with her unborn baby because the bike lanes weren't safe enough. Because when you lose your home, whether through fire or through circumstances that force you onto the street, we don't need hugs, we need houses. That's the kind of leadership I will bring. I've been in this race for less than a month. There may be questions today where I don't have the answer, and I will be honest about that rather than pretend I do. Politicians study problems, lawyers argue about them, builders fix them. I'm the builder. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you to the WRAC board for organizing this important forum. I'm so glad to see this incredible turnout. I'm Faiza Malik. I'm a mom. I'm a renter in Venice with my family. I was born and raised here in Southern California, and I'm running for LA City Council because I want the West Side and our city to be a place where everyone can have a future. My parents immigrated to LA over 50 years ago, and from Pakistan and Burma, and my childhood was shaped by our diverse culture in Los Angeles, particularly on the West Side. My grandfather founded the mosque in Inglewood in the 70s. My family members worked at LAX and opened small businesses. And my uncle even managed the Jamba Juice in Marina del Rey, where I worked for a summer in high school. My family immigrated to Los Angeles because LA was a city of possibilities. This city made it possible for them to build a life for themselves, get an education, get stable housing. I want LA to continue to be a city of possibilities for all of us. But right now, affording basics like housing and food and childcare is becoming more and more unaffordable for too many people, particularly here on the West Side. And our city and this district are facing serious issues. But instead of being honest with constituents about what it will take to actually solve our issues, our current council member is repeatedly choosing shortcuts that kick the can down the road for future generations. We can already see the results of these shortcuts. She's supported budgets that have underfunded our streets and our streetlights, and now the city has to pay out enormous liability payouts because of the disrepair. And it takes a year to get a streetlight fixed. If I'm elected, I will fight to actually fund our neighborhoods. It's easy to sweep away issues like homelessness and our housing shortage and leave it for future generations to deal with. I believe we can get people housed and keep people housed, but only if we are honest about what it will take and what we can do with the courage to fight for the long-term solutions. I have spent my entire career as an attorney fighting for those solutions, for civil rights, for affordability, for housing, for basic protections and dignity for everyday people. I know how to build coalitions to get things done, and I have a track record to prove that, and that's what I'm running on. CD11 residents deserve a city where they feel safe to walk and bike in, where they have robust public programs that provide for everybody and bring us together, where we take care of one another and we protect each other. LA can be that city. That was the city that allowed my parents to have a chance when they immigrated to this country. And that is the city that I'm building for all of us, for my kids and for your kids. Thank you so much, and I look forward to this debate. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for being here. WRAC, thank you so much to all of you for organizing this. Thank you to Venice First Lutheran for giving us their space today. Josh, thank you for your time in moderating. And I also want to take a minute and thank and acknowledge my CD11 staff. These men and women are on the ground in the district and in City Hall every single day, fighting for the changes that you want to see and the resources in city services that you deserve. It is an incredible honor to serve as your member of the LA City Council, and I'm running for re-election to finish what we started. I want to take a quick minute and walk back in time. You guys all remember what our council district looked like under Mike Bonin in 2020 and 2021 and 2022. Remember Mar Vista Park, Westchester Park, the Venice ABH, Centennial Park, Culver Media and Oceanfront Walk, Venice and Globe, Venice and Dell, the Bundy Triangle, Glencoe, Mar Vista Library, Coral Tree, Jefferson, Lincoln and Lake, Lincoln and Flower, 90 in the Culver, and so many more. From the day I took office, my team and I got to work focusing on homelessness finally, with the urgency and the responsible approaches that we all demanded and that we are seeing the results of today. But back then, kids could not safely walk to school. Our seniors, our families couldn't use our parks and our libraries. You'll remember Venice was in the headlines for all the wrong reasons. Our city's #1 tourist destination had become the butt of late night jokes. But my team and I, from day one, have been tackling this crisis with urgency. We have now housed hundreds of people that were previously living in tents and vehicles. Our neighborhoods, our streets, our sidewalks, our wetlands, our beaches, our communities are all safer and more accessible than it was 3 years ago. And Venice is making a comeback story that is part of a larger story that I am trying to write for the West Side. We went from all the wrong reasons to now hosting Baywatch. FIFA will be here this summer for the World Cup, and then we're on to the Olympics. And in the middle of all that, we lost the Palisades in the worst disaster that we have ever seen in our city's history. The weight of responsibility that I feel to see this work through and to continue the fight to ensure that all of our victims have a pathway home is heavy on me. I'm shoulder to shoulder with you, and we're going to see it through. Thanks for having me.
Okay.
Guys.
Okay. And please try and limit your applause so we can get through all these questions. Let's start with the questions from
WRAC. Brentwood, you have the first question for the candidates. Jeremy, you're going to go first. In terms of the Los Angeles Police Department, do you support the current funding for the LAPD, and how would you re-envision the LAPD?
I do. I do. I think that funding the police department is important. I think that there's other ways that we can secure certain parts of our street that don't always have to include the police department or surveillance, but I do support our police department.
What about you, Faiza?
Well, right now we spend 46% of our budget from the discretionary fund on our police, but only 8% of the calls that are received are for violent crimes. And people continue to feel unsafe, even though crime is at its lowest rates. Why is that? I think we have to talk about what actually creates safety in our community, and policing is one part of it, but the way we promote public safety in our community is by investing in things, investing in our streets and sidewalks, investing in housing programs, youth programs, the things that lift people out of poverty. And so I want our police department to have the resources to do their job, to solve violent crimes, and they themselves have said that they are tasked with things like homelessness that they are not equipped to do. So we need to really be funding those alternative resources so their police department has the resources to do what they are tasked to do.
But just to confirm, the 46% that you mentioned, do you support that, or you would lower that, or you would spend it differently?
I think we have to look closely at the police budget when we're talking about our budget conversations about what creates safety, so we invest in other things that promote safety and prevent crime.
But if it was brought to council and you represent the city of London, would you support
I don't believe the police department needs more police helicopters when we should be investing in our youth department.
Tracy, LAPD.
Thanks, Josh. No, obviously, LAPD's budget and its resources and staffing are not anywhere near where they should be. We are so critically dangerously understaffed in the city of Los Angeles.
We're having a debate, sir.
Sorry, I'm gonna have to ask you to leave. I have to ask you to leave. Excuse me, I'm gonna ask you after you leave, sir. Please leave, sir. Thank you. Hey, excuse me. I will ask this entire room to leave if you guys don't be quiet.
Yeah, that's what this.
What's that? We have them at every meeting.
Can I have everybody's attention, please? If you guys can't be quiet, not applaud, not cheer, I will ask this entire room except for RAC members and campaigns to leave. Please be quiet.
That was nothing. You all should come to a city council meeting sometime. In December, the city of Los Angeles dropped down to 8,600 sworn police officers in a city of 4 million people. It is dangerously, critically low. We saw in January of last year the stresses and strains placed on our public safety partners. We already have 911 response times that far exceed national standards because of our staffing situation in LAPD. We absolutely have to invest not only in the additional resources that they need to keep our city safe, and I will tell you, in every community that I go, in CD11, and you all see me, I am everywhere. The conversation always is, how do we get more police? We know that we've got the staffing challenges and the recruitment issues, so we are investing in as many smart supplements to go with LAPD as we can, including the technology, as well as our other core city services.
So to clarify, Tracy, you would increase the budget?
I would absolutely increase the budget.
Okay. Before we move on to Del Rey, I just wanted to get a little bit more on the second part of that question, which I think is really important, is re-envisioning the LAPD. What specifically can we do differently? 30 seconds each. Jeremy?
Well, like Faiza said, I think you have to look at the budget to make that decision. I know that when I have issues here on the west side, I would call and it would take 3-4 hours for a police officer to come. So I think that there's certain needs for them in regards to the different reason of your call. But yes, we need to look into that and look at the budget.
Faiza?
I mean, I think that right now we're spending so much money on our policing and we don't feel safe. And there are so many things we're forcing our police officers to do that they don't even want to do. Minor responses, non-urgent calls, dealing with homelessness. We should be funding alternative crisis response, which we are doing already, and we should expand on that in the West Side. And I think that that frees up our police officers to do their jobs, which is respond to burglaries, respond to violent crimes on our streets, respond to important things that matter. And so I do care about that.
Tracy, re-envisioning?
Yeah, sure. So absolutely, we've got to free our police officers up to handle the most urgent calls. That's why under my leadership, we have seen an historic expansion of our unarmed responses. We actually have our Circle team, for example, housed with us in our council office. We work very, very closely with them and our law enforcement partners. But at the end of the day, we all want, voters want, and residents deserve to have a police department that is adequately staffed, equipped, and empowered to keep us safe.
Like the fire department?
Let's move on to Del Rey. What more can we do? What more can we do about the people with obvious mental health issues who wander our streets and resist any help or services?
We need to focus on rehabilitation centers for those people. We need to focus on getting them the help that they need and treating them like neighbors that they are. So it's not just a one-size-fits-all model. It's working with them on rehabilitation centers, getting them the medicine they need, getting them off their feet so they could do well in our neighborhoods.
Faiza?
So I think the number one thing we need to really do is make sure we are ensuring our mental health service dollars are actually helping people. That's what's going to help people on our streets that are facing, those acute people that are facing mental health challenges on the street. And right now, the term service resistant is something that people have been using, and what we are finding is that what people are being offered, the shelter people are being offered, the services people are being offered is not necessarily what they need. And so when they do not get those right services, they don't get the right shelter, then they are termed service resistant. And so what we really need to do is make sure we are offering our unhoused neighbors on the streets the right services. We need to ensure accountability of our public dollars to ensure it is going to mental health providers that are actually going to help people. I do care about that when it comes to our homelessness budget. And so, yes, we need to keep oversight of those dollars and make sure we're spending it right.
Tracy?
So obviously, we have a very serious mental health and addiction crisis unfolding on our streets. You know, part of the reason that we have been so successful with our encampment and our housing interventions over the last few years is because generally, you know, for folks that wanted the help, that were able and well enough to accept the help when it was offered, they said yes. And we've been able to stabilize and actually house hundreds of people. You probably see what we all see on the streets in these encampments.
Please be quiet.
So if you look around, you probably see what I see out on the streets, right? I don't necessarily look at some of these individuals and think, I need an inside safe motel room. I think I need a doctor and a hospital. And one of the things that have been baked out of our local policy that is compounding the problem is that we no longer have a binary choice between accepting help and consequences for not accepting help. And we have got to start investing in the long-term residential care facilities that focus on sobriety and recovery.
Let's move on to Mar Vista. Within the actual powers of a Los Angeles City Council member, including zoning authority, budget votes, and oversight, how would you balance state housing mandates with neighborhood infrastructure, public safety, and quality of life concerns in District 11? And what specific actions would you prioritize in your first 2 years? Housing question. Jeremy.
I think before we look at affordable housing, we have to make sure that our neighborhoods are safe and we are able to meet the infrastructure and the demands. You know, if you look at the Palisades, for example, we ran out of water. The streets were chaotic, and it was like a third world country with people running down the streets. So before we focus on affordable housing and building within these communities, we need to make sure that our neighbors are safe first that live in our communities.
Faisa.
Well, look, everybody knows we are facing a housing affordability crisis. Our affordability crisis is driving our homelessness crisis. Our eviction crisis is driving our homelessness crisis. People are being priced out of their apartments on the West Side, and so we need to accommodate more affordable housing on the West Side. And we have to do it with community input. I think our state bills that have pushed transit-oriented communities are very good because that is where we should be concentrating housing along our commercial and transit corridors. I think that it is important that we do it with meaningful input. When we do it in these areas, we can actually reduce development pressure along our high fire severity zones. And so that's the purpose of good community planning. And I want to work with communities like Mar Vista to make sure we are citing our affordable housing and we are getting to yes. We have to get to yes in this district.
Tracy.
So thank you for that. So for those of you that have worked on the community plan update process with me in my office, you know that we have rolled our sleeves up and worked very, very deeply over hundreds of hours to address density and to provide zoning opportunities that will allow us to hit our state housing mandates. When it comes to mandates like SB 79, those are written by politicians in Sacramento that have never visited your neighborhood. And here in Council District 11, we have some of the most complex, disaster-prone geography anywhere in the city. Substandard, windy roads, communities like Venice that are dense on infrastructure 100 years old, communities like Westchester and Playa, next door to our nation's second largest airport, all of which abuts a massive industrial complex at the bottom of our district. We can accommodate for housing. We've done that through our citywide housing incentive program and our community plan updates. We don't need a mandate to get it done. We're doing it.
We're in Venice, and so I think this is just an appropriate time to ask about the Venice Dell community project, which I know so many of you have been following. I would say we can do a minute each on this because I think it's important to explain where you stand, and we are talking about housing. You all support housing. So where do you stand on Venice Dell? Jeremy.
So, it's a city parking lot, right, that has been approved to turn into housing. It's already been approved. We are having a housing crisis. So why are we continuing to fight this? Why are we not allowing units to be put in so people are able to move into the community and to live there affordably? Because it doesn't look good at the end of your street? That's not right. And in my opinion, we need to, instead of continue to spend millions of dollars of your tax, hard-earned money to fight something that doesn't look great or doesn't relate with our current council member, I'm not here to make those decisions. I'm here to work with you and the people in each neighborhood to see what's right for that neighborhood, not spend your money on something I don't like.
So I've spent my career fighting for affordable housing, and if we are concerned about homelessness on our streets, we need to build affordable housing projects like Venice Dell. Venice Dell is on a public parking lot that the city itself wanted to use for affordable housing. This project went through all of the proper channels to get the approvals from our city council with community input. It has been legally upheld multiple times despite challenges, and every year that we spend fighting it is costing us millions in taxpayer dollars that we should be using to house people. And I want to really be clear, this project is not a land grab. It is being developed by reputable, nonprofit, affordable housing developers that are going to provide 120 units for people who really need affordable housing in our community. It has gone through all the proper approvals. It is not dead, despite what our council member says. And I would appreciate if you want, for more rebuttal time, I'm happy to talk about all of that, the misinformation that's being spread. We have to stop spreading misinformation and get Venice Dell built.
Venice Dell, and is it dead?
Thanks, Josh. Look, I think everybody is sick to death of talking about this. You know, this is another Mike Bonin boondoggle that for a decade has not been able to get off the ground. We have extremely limited tax dollars to spend and invest in homelessness and housing. This project has got a ballooning taxpayer cost that renders absolutely nothing about it affordable. It has been plagued with backroom deals, shady appraisals, and all sorts of deception on behalf of the developer. What I'm excited about is the alternative plan that I introduced and the council approved. We are going to put a coastal access hub at lot 731 and move the housing and do unit for unit replacement at lot 701. And let me be clear, we are doing housing on the west side. 400 new units at City View in Westchester, 400 more at Venice and Maine, 350 at Gateway, Pico Gateway.
Your time's up.
Oh, thank you. So we are doing.
Yeah, hold on. Candidates do not get to say when the time is up. Tracy, you can finish what you were saying.
I was going to say was we have major projects going up. Another 300 units at Pico Gateway in West LA. Thousands of units are going up. 40% of that in CD11 is affordable.
But as FISA said, though, is Venice Dell dead?
The city council has already moved to do another project on those parcels. There is still litigation pending to build this boondoggle. I don't know and I can't predict ultimately what a court will do, but we have such better opportunities to use our land and our money wisely.
30 seconds, FISA. How is this not a boondoggle?
It is in line with the development of housing in all over the city, so first of all, and it has been held that, and first of all, if we invest in affordable housing, that is housing that is here forever. That is the cost over a lifetime, and so the cost is worth it for us. Second of all, I want to say that the alternative plans that Councilmember Park is talking about are not feasible. There has been no forward movement on them, okay? The plan she's talking about is not moving forward. Second of all, I just want to address her claims about saying she's building housing. She cannot claim housing under policies that she has actively opposed, like our zoning laws, like our streamlining laws. She cannot do that. And that is for under policies, also housing that has been built under her predecessor. She is at ribbon cuttings for housing that is being built from her predecessor.
Tracy, 15 seconds to respond to that.
Since I have been in office, we have advanced more than 60 housing projects. We have another 30 in the pipeline. Look around you. There is building going on all over the west side. People are fighting to want to come here, but they want to do it in a market that isn't complicated by unnecessary taxes and regulations, and that's where we are.
I want to ask another question about...
Can I have 15 seconds?
I'd like to move on to another question about Venice. So historically, Venice has been defined by its artists, street performers, small independent businesses, and unconventional cultural spaces. Many residents feel that over time, parts of that identity have been diminished or regulated out of existence. At the same time, the city often promotes Venice as a world-class tourist destination. How would you balance economic development and tourism while protecting Venice's cultural, artistic, and bohemian identity? And what specific actions would you take to ensure that growth does not fundamentally change what Venice is? Jeremy.
Well, really quick, Tracy had mentioned taxes rising. She wants to raise them by a half a cent to 10.25 on the west side. Taxes are getting out of control. People in Venice can't afford to live in Venice. So we need to work on lowering the cost so people can afford to live in our neighborhoods now. And that is not how it is. People are not coming to Venice. The boardwalk is not booming. Homelessness is on a rise. So we need to beautify our communities, and we need to beautify Venice. And on top of that, we have the World Cup, we have the Olympics coming, and we are in no way prepared or ready for anyone to come to our communities and to come to District 11 right now.
Faiza, what would you do to keep Venice Venice?
I love Venice. I love living in Venice. I love that my children get to walk in their neighborhood. This is a walkable neighborhood. I love the fact that this is a diverse community that has been built by immigrants, by our Black community. That's what people love about living here. And we have to protect that culture. We have to preserve the affordability of Venice. And so that is why housing is a #1 issue for Venice. In terms of economic development, I want to make sure we are investing in Venice. We are making sure that we are beautifying our spaces. This is why we invest in good transit, good street infrastructure, greening. We can clean up and invest in sanitation. The only solution to preserving Venice isn't just corporations coming in and taking over Abbot Kinney. We have to create space for our artists to be able to continue to make Venice the beautiful cultural hub that it is. And by that, I mean, that's why I'm fighting for artists, housing for artists in my housing platform. This is why we talk about supporting our community-owned small businesses in Venice.
Tracy.
We absolutely love. Look, Venice has always been a countercultural outpost for hippies and artists and musicians, and it's always struggled with the conflicts of modernization and gentrification. We're trying to balance, our preservation of our rich history and culture by, for example, we've got Baywatch. I can't imagine anything more LA West Side culture than Baywatch. Now taking over the historic Venice Lifeguard Tower, moving the Venice Heritage Museum into Westminster Park, rolling out our Pollinator corridor that is going to connect Oceanfront Walk all the way to Penmar, building a blend of housing options that meet the needs of a very diverse community that enable them to stay here.
All right, let's move to Pacific Palisades. What is your plan going forward to facilitate the Palisades recovery from the devastating Palisades fire? And does it include adding more housing density in the very high fire hazard severity zone, as well as a plan for emergency evacuation? Jeremy.
Okay, so first off, we need to staff the Palisades. We need to make sure that there's a field office there with people there every single day. That includes soil testing, that includes remediation, that includes rebuilding permits, that includes every single thing that the Palisades has questions about, and the families in the Palisades need to know how and what the path forward is there. We do not, this is my first, the Palisades needs a team of its own people, and I'm sorry.
Faisa?
So I think that I agree with you, Jeremy, that we need specific focus and leadership to support our residents in the Pacific Palisades. And I know I wasn't the council member when the fires happened, but I know that on day one, it is going to be my plan to make sure there's no stop in the services for our Palisadians to support in the recovery and rebuilding efforts. And so I will be there. We will have a dedicated staff person that is for the Palisades, for our recovery and our rebuild. And I think it's really important to look at our evacuation routes and our emergency planning, as the ACOM report recently found, that we are desperately in need of fixing our infrastructure and our evacuation planning for the Palisades. And we have to urgently handle those issues. We have to address climate resiliency. That'll help us get insured. And so when it comes to density, we have to do community planning. We have to think about how can we also rebuild, but also make room again for our renters that lost their homes, for our Pali High teachers, for our seniors that can't afford to rebuild. Let's talk about making sure that rebuilding for them. And to me, affordability and making sure we build back our apartments and condos matters, and as well as our mobile home parks.
Tracy?
Where do we even start? This is a year that I really worry as the economic realities set in for people. ALE and mortgage forbearance are expiring, and so getting folks the access to affordable capital that they need to cover the gap and resolving these lingering insurance disputes and the statewide insurance crisis are essential next steps in the recovery. You all know I'm fighting to create a climate resilience district for the Palisades that will enable the long-term investment in the sustainable, resilient infrastructure we need. Obviously, when it comes to the emergency evacuation routes, you all have talked with me about this for over a year. We are up to our elbows in the work that we are doing around this. We're going to be looking in places where it's feasible at road widening. We're going to be looking at our street level strategies and alternative routes. The recommendations in the AECOM report, as you all know, will be the subject of our town hall meeting tomorrow night. We will pick up this conversation then.
Why don't we?
I just want to ask a quick follow-up. Would you support more housing in Pacific Palisades? Is that something that you think the Palisades needs adding to the current density? Jeremy?
I think we need to focus on getting the people in the Palisades home first. And I think after that, we then could evaluate if the infrastructure can meet the demand of more people in the Palisades, okay? Like I said earlier, we ran out of water. It was chaotic. Our own neighbors couldn't even get out of there. But I want to ask Tracy, when you cut the budget in May of 2024 for the fire department, why did you do that and where did that start? When there was a fire on January 1st and you didn't follow up on that, why didn't you follow up on that? You said you weren't part of pre-deployment. Why didn't you just check in on with the local fire department and see, well, maybe there was a fire.
Tracy, you can respond to that.
You know, we should worry, you know, we should look into that.
Tracy respond.
There's a lot to unpack there, so let me do what I can in the limited time that we have. You know, in 2024, what actually happened was I fought to save the positions at the fire department that were on the chopping block. And I took on council president and the budget chair to do that. And then I voted to approve their 22% raises. And then I voted to approve another $50 million into the budget to make them whole. And then on December 17th, 2024, I went to Fire Commission to say that wasn't enough, and still we were not prepared for an emergency or major world events. 21 days later, the Palisades fire happened. I have been blowing the whistle about the lack of staffing and funding at the fire department since the day I took office. Real quick, I am really proud to be endorsed by our frontline firefighters and paramedics, and they wouldn't be endorsing me if they thought I defunded them. I see a few of them are here today, so let's give them a CD11 thank you.
Before we go to FISA, 10 seconds on density in the Palisades.
I've been very clear, and this is all in my written recovery plan. We cannot even begin to talk about additional density unless and until we are satisfied with the infrastructure and the evacuation routes.
30 seconds, FISA.
I want us to be able to ensure that we're building housing for our Pali High teachers, for our seniors that lost their homes. I have spoken to fire survivors who have told me they're not sure if they can afford to rebuild, but they would love to rebuild their single family lot if they could add a back house for their children to live in and they could age in place. And so I really want us to be talking about the needs of our Palisades residents in what we do for the rebuild to ensure that our mobile home parks are rebuilt. And so I think that's what we're talking about. I really want to disentangle the word density as a scary thing and talk about what our Palisadians need.
All right, let's move to West LA and Sawtell. West LA, Sawtell, do you support open and transparent labor negotiations with the city's unions and a prohibition on the city entering into any labor agreement that results in a current or future budget deficit, even though this would be opposed by the city's unions? Jeremy?
I am not fully prepared to answer that question, so I will move on.
FISA?
Look, our public sector jobs are good city jobs. We want to protect our public sector jobs. Like for our firefighters, I agree we should be protecting our firefighters' jobs. And I think our labor unions are also at the table. I'm so proud to be endorsed by so many labor unions that represent our service workers, our hotel workers, our janitors, our teachers, our healthcare workers. And so for all of these unions, we have to make sure that LA is a place where we are providing good paying jobs for everybody. And I think our city jobs are some of the best jobs that we have in the city. They're the ones that are providing security for people, retirements for people. And so we have to be really serious about making sure that we can balance our budget and not do it on the backs of everyday people. I do not want to see more furloughs in the city. I do not want to see layoffs in our city budget.
Tracy, I'm just going to read the back half of that question again. And a prohibition on the city entering into any labor agreement that results in current or future budget deficit, even though this would be opposed by the city's unions.
The second half of the question, I'm not sure that that's actually legally possible under the laws that govern collective bargaining. I will say, to the extent that transparency can be baked in, absolutely it should be. You know, our personnel costs for the city of Los Angeles are our #1 expenditure, but the investment that we make in our city staff is also our #1 investment. And, you know, I am very, very proud to be endorsed by many, many of our labor unions around the city, including our firefighters and our first responders, builders, and others around the city. The reality is, in our budget, we have got to be able to not just staff and fairly pay our workers, but we have to put that money into our core services. I think we can invest in our staff and invest in our departments and deliver what Angelenos need. But we have to cut out some of the frivolous spending. We all know that we're down rabbit holes of spending on things no one cares about.
Let's move to Westchester Playa. If you are elected, how do each of you propose to ensure fiscal responsibility and accountability, tracking and auditing all of the city departments, especially funds for the homeless, LASA, so that there's transparency and accountability with how our tax dollars are being spent? How will you go about auditing all funds on the homeless that have been spent to date that have not been properly recorded?
Well, if you go to voteweinberg.com/dashboard, I launched an example today which shows full transparency in real time that will show what we're spending, what we're building, potholes that we're fixing. And it's a full interactive dashboard that you can see how many people are looking at it and what problems are in front of us, and using that technology to be transparent with all of you. So you know what's going on in our office, and we know what we need to do to fix issues that you present, and we're here to work on those. Currently, when you go to the council site, in my opinion, it's archaic, it's not interactive, and there's no transparency between us and the council office.
Faisa.
I absolutely agree that we have a problem of mistrust in our local government right now. And the reason is because we lack oversight and accountability and transparency, which is why I so appreciate the work that our LA City Controller is doing, Kenneth Mejia, and I'm so proud to be endorsed by him. And he is calling for a 2-year budget. He is putting out information. That's where we found out the data about the LAPD budget size because of his work. And so I absolutely agree that to rebuild trust, the city of LA needs more transparency in our budget process. More Angelenos need to be brought into our budget process. I support audits, especially for our homelessness programs. Inside Safe is costing us so much money, and we are temporarily housing people. We are not permanently housing people. We deserve to know what we are doing with our mental health dollars, our services, to ensure that we are getting people housed, as Councilmember Park keeps claiming she is doing. We have to make sure that people in our district know where their money is going, and I will support that. It is the #1 thing I care about. Thank you.
Tracy?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We absolutely have to bring more transparency and accountability to our homeless spending. You know, it has been literally one boondoggle after another, projects and services that just have doubled down on failure year after year. There's been audit after audit after audit, and literally nobody can explain where the money went. Part of the reason I personally introduced the legislation in the city that now requires accountability measures to be baked into every contract with our service providers. We all recognize that there is a limited amount of money to go around. And with the COVID era infusion of capital into our city to address homelessness drying up, it is more important than ever that we are investing it in the actual programs, mental health and addiction-based residential treatment programs that get people sober and on a pathway to stability. Inside Safe is expensive. Acquiring and master leasing motels is expensive. And that's why we have to look at a number of different types of housing opportunities that meet the need of the people we're trying to serve.
I want you to respond to something that it seemed like FISA was implying, that there's been a focus on temporary housing, but not necessarily permanent housing. What specifically can you say about that? And are the numbers that were put out on permanent housing a little fudgy?
For years and years and years, the sole focus was on, we're going to build brick and mortar housing as the only solution to homelessness. And so that didn't work. We don't have decades. We don't have hundreds of billions of dollars. So the acquisition of increasing our supply of interim housing was absolutely essential. And it was, in fact, our supply of interim housing that has enabled us to make the progress that you all see all over the West Side. Do we need more permanent housing? Yes, yes, and yes. But we have to do both.
FISA, what would you do in terms of permanent housing?
Well, I absolutely think that we do need to build more interim shelter. This is why I was so dismayed to see our council member close our only shelter for transitional age youth at the end of 2024. But people are gonna cycle in and out of homelessness in these shelters unless we build the permanent housing, and that is the only way people exit homelessness, with services and permanent supportive housing. And we have to build the shelter, but we cannot endlessly fund it, and that's what we're seeing with our bloated homelessness budget, ultimately.
Tracy, can you respond to that, closing a shelter?
Sure. You know, for those of us from Venice that have lived with the ABH from its inception, you already know that it was already temporary. You already know that I extended the lease on it for 18 additional months. You already know that we closed it down because Metro required the site back for the 400-unit permanent housing project that we are very excited to welcome to the site.
Anything you want to say on this, Jeremy, before we move on?
Well, Tracy talks about transparency, so I'd like to ask a question about that.
You don't get to ask the questions.
Okay.
We have a lot of important audience questions to get to.
Sure.
But is there anything specifically on permanent?
We'll get to it. We'll get to it.
Temporary housing.
We'll get to it.
And just 15 seconds, FISA. I saw you shaking your head like crazy during that answer from Tracy. Anything you want to say?
There was more time for the Bridge Home Shelter. It was not, we had many more years to keep the shelter open before it needed to break ground for the permanent project. And so we absolutely, we should have kept the shelter open.
Let's move on to some audience questions. Thank you for that. Okay, so first question, Jeremy. Will you commit to strengthening renter protections and lobbying Sacramento to repeal Costa-Hawkins?
Absolutely. I think that we need to protect our renters, and we need to make sure that they are not price gouged and that that their rents are not going through the roof, and they can afford to live in the neighborhoods that they intend to rent in.
FISA?
Yep, I love this question. Thank you so much, because this is what I've been doing for the past 8 years as an attorney at Public Counsel, a nonprofit attorney, by the way. I've been fighting for universal just cause protections, and I recently helped champion lowering rents for rent-stabilized tenants all over Los Angeles. Costa-Hawkins is a state law that is preventing us from expanding rent control in the city of Los Angeles, which we absolutely need to do, along with building more housing. And so I support stronger renter protections. It is what I've done. Unlike our current council member, I will support renters in the district. Will not allow a developer to mass evict 700 people from CD11, and I think we need stronger renter protections because this district is becoming way too unaffordable to people, and I want to make sure that we can keep people here in CD11.
Do to make rent more affordable is to stop adopting stupid policies in City Hall and stupid ballot measures that make the cost of developing housing and the cost of providing housing in the city of Los Angeles more expensive. You know, like many of us, I also supported the historic expansion of our just cause eviction requirements. I also was supportive of our city's rental assistance program, our right to counsel, our anti-tenant harassment ordinance, and I approved revisions to the RSO. But it's also really important that as we are looking at our housing policies, we are thinking about the impacts that we are causing, particularly when it relates to utilities, insurance, maintenance, the cost of repairs, and we have put an untenable amount of burden that has unfortunately driven the costs higher and higher.
We got 60 questions from the audience, so thank you all. We're not going to ask all of them. But a question from Tom Pryor. How long have you lived in the district? What brought you here and from where? Jeremy.
I've lived in the district for 40 years. And what brought me here was the Palisades fire. And what brought me here was all the things that I uncovered after I wrote this 120-page report when the city didn't want to connect the fire on January 1st to the fire on January 7th. And what I uncovered was something so much bigger than the Palisades fire that ultimately affects all of us. After talking to so many people, I've noticed that there couldn't be a bigger divide between the left and the right. And I'm here to talk about moving forward. This is supposed to be a nonpartisan local election by local neighbors. And this has turned into, if you look under the hood, an election that's funded by huge, massive super PACs that are not funded by neighbors outside of our state and outside of who we are. I want us neighbors to make the decisions of what happens on our streets here, not by people that live outside of where we are.
Faisa.
All right. So, as I said, I was born and raised here in Southern California. I was so lucky to spend my entire childhood here. I was lucky to go to college and law school on the East Coast and spend my early legal career there. And my family and I decided to move back after my son was born in New York. And we wanted to be home and raise our kids with a multi-generational experience. I see they're in the front row, my kids are. And so we moved back to the West Side in 2017, and I've lived in District 11 since 2019. And for the past 8 years, I've been fighting for renters' rights and affordable housing all over the city. And very proud of my citywide work, and very proud to be fighting for my community now in Venice.
Tracy.
All right, so I think you all know I was born in Downey in LA County, and then after my parents' divorce, I moved out to the high desert with my mom. And I went away to college on the East Coast as well, came back, went to law school at LMU, and I had been a practicing attorney for more than 20 years. I moved to Venice in 2012, but I also previously had lived in Delray and South Brentwood. I then had a very long stint over in Hollywood and moved back to Venice, like I said, in 2012.
This next audience question was submitted by Tracy Park. Just kidding, it was submitted by Anonymous. Do you think Mike Bonin did a good job during his term? Jeremy.
Tracy, I voted for you. And what I've seen over the last 4 years, in my opinion, I've been let down by, as a neighbor and as someone in this community. I did not agree with what Mike Bonin was doing, and put my trust in you and our district and our neighborhood. And here I am.
Faisa.
Thank you so much, Anonymous, for asking this question. I think it is the question on everybody's minds. And so I just want to start by saying, it is so bizarre that our council member keeps lying and saying that I am Mike Bonin's lawyer. I just want to clear on the record that I have never been Mike Bonin's lawyer. I'm nobody's personal lawyer. I work at Public Counsel, which is a nonprofit legal aid agency, okay? And second of all, I think that I want everyone to be very clear that Mike Bonin, this race is not about Mike Bonin. Mike Bonin is not on the ballot. This is about all of us moving forward as a community to invest in the things we need for our kids and our future, our housing, our streets, our city budget. That's what this is about. And we need to move forward. As I said, Mike Bonin did projects, Tracy Parks is doing projects, and now we have to move forward into the future. Thank you.
About Mike Bonin. We've been there and done that before, and we don't want to do it again, and we're hearing the same policies that we heard before. No, and do I think Mike Bonin did a good job? Obviously not. I'm sitting here.
Guys, please, quiet.
But Tracy, will you continue saying that FISA is Mike Bonin's lawyer?
She is literally representing Mike Bonin and these boondoggle interests in shakedown lawsuits against the city. She's endorsed by Mike Bonin. She refers to him as her mentor. It's the same thing.
Based on that FISA.
I have never represented Mike Bonin. I am not Mike Bonin's lawyer. I work for a nonprofit legal aid called Public Counsel that is serving low-income communities all over Los Angeles, okay? And I am never called Mike Bonin my mentor. I have worked with many council members in my time at Public Counsel. I have good relationships with many of them. Mike Bonin was just one council member that I did advocacy with. I have never represented him. I am not representing him, and I think I would like you to stop saying that in your fundraisers and to the press. Thank you.
Let's move on to another audience question.
What I've noticed is exactly this. There's a left and a right here, and there's continued arguing over two sides that has nothing to do with our path forward, for our streets, for our people, for us in the community. And I'm here to move forward, not to continue with this left and right.
Okay, thank you. Quick announcement.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is supposed to go till 3 o'clock. If there's continued interruptions, we're not going to get to your questions. You've all been asked, and it's all been read as to what the rules of engagement are here. Please stop the applause, stop the heckling, stop the yelling. Let's get through the questions. You got plenty of time between now and June to heckle them all, okay? Now's not the time. Now's the time to listen. Thank you.
Let's move to Robert Nichols' question. What would you do to fully fund and implement ADA and safe street improvements?
Well, we need to make sure that on every street, people that need the ADA accessibility have it. We need to make sure that they're treated equally like all of us. So I would do absolutely do everything to make sure that the streets, first off, they're accessible. So they're able to access what they need to access and be mobile, just like everyone else.
FISA.
I think the streets are the most important things we need to be investing in right now. I think everyone can agree that we need we need more safe streets. We need crosswalks for our children. We need transit infrastructure. We need to ensure accessibility, and the longer we defer it, the more it'll cost us later. And so in our budget, we really need to make sure that there is a dedicated line item for our streets so we can make those important investments to invest in the bike lanes that we need to keep our safe streets, so we do not have tragedies like the loss of Regan Colgram. And our council member voted against Measure HLA, and she lobbied against it, which would have mandated that the city of LA comply with its mobility plan. We cannot keep deferring that. The voters overwhelmingly approved that measure, and we need to make sure our city budget is investing in implementing it. Because the longer it takes, the more liability payouts we have, the more our streets are dangerous. We cannot fix our potholes. This is the most important thing we should be doing right now.
Tracy, and explain your vote against HLA.
So HLA is a mandate that has unfortunately eliminated the flexibility to engage directly with communities about what kinds of safety improvements make sense and where those should go. Unfortunately, HLA, and this, relates to a recent example in Playa del Rey, with the fatal accident that we had there. Even if HLA was fully implemented today, Pershing isn't eligible for a bike lane. Do we need to reopen that conversation now? Yes. But because of these mandates around HLA, it is extremely difficult. Despite that, here in CD11, we have actually delivered more miles of bike lanes since I took office than all of the council members who actually endorsed HLA. I live in Venice. I ride a bike. We are doing incredible bike mobility projects, but the first thing we need to do is get the damn sidewalks fixed.
Let's move to a question on homelessness. 4118. Do you support it? Where do you stand on 4118? Would you enforce it? Jeremy?
Well, first off, with homelessness, we need to do a better job. And there's so many opportunities. I'll just move on. You can go ahead.
Oh, are you sure?
Yeah, I'm being laughed at. You can go ahead. No, go. It's okay. No, it's okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Faisa?
Oh, okay. So homelessness is such a crisis, of course, in our city. Everybody knows that. And the thing that we can do to solve homelessness is, number one, preventing homelessness. That is driving people onto our streets. And then secondly, we need to be making sure our money is going to shelter and services and housing. 4118 is a tool that is the city passed to manage our public space access and where people can camp and not camp. It is costing us millions of dollars to put up those signs, but it is not solving homelessness. It is merely pushing it off, criminalizing folks. And so as a policy, it does not solve homelessness. What we need to do is invest in the things that we know that work, and that is shelter and services. And I literally was just there, I was on Rose recently, and I saw two 4118 zones with circles, and there were tents there on the corner, in between where the circles were not intersecting. And so ask yourselves, did the signage stop the tents on the street? No, we're gonna end up in a cycle of spending money unless we invest in the shelter and services and housing we need.
Tracy?
Do I support 4118? Yes. Am I using 4118? Yes. Because there is no scenario on no planet where kids should have to step over drug camps to get to school. If it were up to me, I would expand the areas that 4118 allows us to cover, and I have. I've introduced legislation to include all of our critical infrastructure, our very high fire severity zones, our environmentally sensitive habitat areas. This is a tool that we use to manage these issues. We roll these zones out after we've done an intervention that connects people to housing and services. But that is how we maintain our public spaces when we've done these interventions. It doesn't stop somebody from trying to put a new tent in that place, but it enables us and our service providers to tell those individuals, you just can't be this close to that school.
I want to ask the last question that we got from the audience, but we've already sort of been over it. So it focuses on LAHSA and homeless intervention, but a lot of our audience members and a lot of our questions centered around where's the money? It seems like on homelessness we continue to spend so much money and not get the results that we deserve. So how would you address that money that's gone missing, and how do you restructure something as bloated as the homelessness budget? Jeremy.
There is no money. So when we're continue to be told that there is money to spend, there is no money to spend. So we first need to look at the data and the budget and see what we can move around, where we've overspent, and then from there make decisions. I think that there are opportunities here, or we could have temporary housing where we don't have to spend all of this money first on building housing that takes years and years and years to build. There's many opportunities where there's temporary housing that we can put people in. Rehabilitate them, and then from there, move forward.
So I think that what we really need when it comes to our homeless services agency and our infrastructure in our region is better coordination. LAHSA was supposed to be a partnership between the county and the city, and now the county has pulled out. And so people are wondering, what are we going to do with our city dollars for LAHSA? And what the county has provided on homelessness is providing services to people, and the city has been investing in the shelter and the housing. And so I think that we in the county is already starting to implement its own homelessness department. I do not believe we should be creating our own homelessness department. I want to make sure that we are coordinating with the county to do what the county does well, which is provide the services. And I want us in the city to make sure that we're spending our dollars on the housing and the shelter, but it really requires coordination and finding the efficiencies in our system to solve this. And so it's not an overnight fix, and we have to have that transparency and accountability.
Tracy?
Well, I think among other things, we need to invest our tax dollars in recovery-based housing, not handing out needles in parks. That is one thing that we have to focus on, is the mental health and the addiction component. We are never going to have the tens of billions of dollars that it's going to take to do enough brick and mortar housing, even to address the current population of folks on the streets. That's why I've been really proud to, for example, support our adaptive reuse ordinance, which will help us be able to do conversions of buildings into housing, including interim and permanent, more quickly. Part of the reason we are master leasing the hotels is because they're already built. And one of the challenges that we run into, in addition to this space, is the costs associated with this. So in CD11, we're actually pairing higher level services into our interim housing inventory to address some of those underlying issues.
I want to ask one follow-up to something that FISA brought up that I think is pretty important, is that with the county leaving LAHSA, you had said that you don't think that the city should go at it alone, but now without the county and LAHSA, how would you fix that coordination? Because the county clearly didn't like the direction of LAHSA. The city's still in LAHSA. And if the county doesn't want that coordination, how is that something you would address?
I think that we should go back to able to try to develop that partnership between the city and county. And we do not have the expertise that so many of the LAHSA workers do, and so I respect the work that our LAHSA workers are doing to do that outreach and those services. We rely on those services, and so we can't pull out from that. And so I really think that we should be going back and talking to the county about better partnership.
Tracy, isn't the path for LAHSA uncertain, though? And what would you do to address that relationship?
Completely uncertain. Look, I've wanted a divorce from LAHSA since I was elected. And, you know, we have just seen year after year after year, complete lack of accountability and lack of results, which is why it's so frustrating. You know, it was clear with Measure H that the county was going to pull out, claim the money for themselves, and now we as a city, we're gonna end up contracting out from the county what we were paying LAHSA to do. I don't know, is your experience that the county does anything better than the city or than LAHSA? I don't think so. I think centralizing the delivery of our homeless services locally and having more control and oversight over how and where the money is spent makes a lot of sense.
But isn't it important that we go at homelessness with the county, because then you'll just have the homeless being pushed into the city and the city won't have that support?
We're obviously going to have a cooperative partnership with them. Their obligation is to provide the services, including the addiction and the mental health services that people so desperately need. So we're going to have that there. But it really, truly pick your poison between LAHSA and the county. Really what we need to do is revamp the way that we are dealing with our homelessness system by shifting our focus onto the sobriety and recovery-based housing solutions.
Before we move on to lightning round and then closing statements, we're almost there. Thank you all for your patience. Jeremy, anything lastly you want to say on homelessness or LAHSA?
I'm good.
Okay, let's move to lightning round. We already did 4118, so the second question is, do you support the proposal to add a half-cent sales tax dedicated solely to building and maintaining fire stations and increasing staffing and fire equipment in the city of LA? Jeremy.
I do not think that we should be raising our taxes. I think that we need to be looking at where we're spending money and how we're spending it smartly now, and then allocating that money to the resources we need. But I don't think a solution is raising all of our taxes by 0.5 cent.
And these are supposed to be about 15 seconds each to respond. Faiza?
Sorry.
I want our fire department to make sure that they have the resources that they need. Sales taxes are regressive and hurt working people. I want to make sure our city budget is actually making sure our fire department has the fleet replacement and all of the budget that they need to do their work. And so, but ultimately, I don't think we need another sales tax that's going to be harmful to working people.
So 2 no's. Tracy?
Yes, I do. And look, I don't want higher taxes either, but the reality here is this deficit with our fire department is not going to be solved inside the 4 walls of our city budget. We have the same number of firefighters and fire stations today in the city of Los Angeles that we had in the 1960s, despite the fact that we've added 1.5 million people to our population. We have probably 100 rigs out of service in the boneyard. Right now, today, 95% of our reserve fleet is out of service. We are dangerously, critically understaffed in our fire department, and we saw it and felt it on January 7th. We have no choice but to do this.
Another lightning round.
And the reality is, Josh, just hang on. We have just a tad until we hit the cap.
15 seconds for this. 15 seconds for this.
Wait. 0.75 cents until we hit the cap. There are going to be competing ballot measures. That money is going to get used for something. It should be for our firefighters.
This is not a fire department issue, though. This is not the Palisades fire is not a fire department issue. Okay, there was a fire on January 1st.
Faisa, anything you want to say?
Okay, there was a fire on January 1st. Let's move on. You didn't do anything to make sure that
let's
fire
move
was
on
out.
to another lightning round question. SB 79.
I'm just saying, this is not a fire department issue.
SB 79. Because that's the order, and then we'll switch for closing
numbers,
statements.
everybody.
SB 79.
I think we already
15 seconds.
brought up SB 79.
Do you support it?
Yeah, I support it. It's already been passed.
Faisa.
I did put out a statement that I support it because transit-oriented development is good for our communities.
Tracy.
I have the most disaster-prone geography in the city. I need the flexibility to keep my community safe.
Okay, 15 seconds for these. What is one positive quality you respect about each of your 2 opponents? Jeremy. I was just submitted the question.
Yep, I think Faiza is a wonderful woman. She called me the other day. I think she's smart, intelligent, and I respect her.
Tracy, your current council person. I think you've said your piece on the Palisades fire. Faisa?
Look, I just appreciate both of my the candidates up here. We're up here because we care about our communities. You know, I do appreciate, Jeremy, that you jumped into the race because you deserve to be heard as a fire survivor. You deserve to tell your story. And Tracy, you and I disagree on so much policy, but I see you fighting for the community.
Tracy.
I don't know either one of these individuals, but you know, I don't know either one of them, but it takes a lot of courage to run for office as a first-time candidate. I know I just did this myself 3 years ago. I left my career as an attorney and took a leave of absence to run a campaign because I am so deeply committed to our community and our city.
Thank you.
These folks are willing to do that too, and we
Thank
should
you. 15 seconds. So, what is your favorite place to take first-time visitors in LA in CD11? Jeremy.
Well, it used to be the Bluffs, and it used to be, where I grew up, and that's where I used to take in my childhood home at 655 J. Conway, where I was born.
Faisa?
Gosh, this is such a fun question. I love taking people to Sawtelle and going to all of our amazing restaurants there because I love that we have a historic Japantown in the district. I love that.
Tracy.
Bike ride to Playa, volleyball during the day, burgers at the Shack, dinner at the Venice Steakhouse.
All right, this last one I'm just going to combine. You only have to answer one of them. You could either tell us your favorite author, your favorite band, or your favorite, musical artist band. Go.
I'm a huge Depeche Mode fan.
Faisa.
I love 90s R&B and hip hop, but I also am a huge Bollywood fan, and so everyone can talk to me about that later.
Tracy.
Okay, I've seen the Dave Matthews Band over 100 times.
You learn something new every day. All right, let's move on to closing statements. Tracy, since you went last, you will go first, whoever was worried about the order. Tracy, 3 minutes, go. 2 minutes, 2 minutes.
2 minutes, all
Closing
right.
statement.
You guys, I really just want to say thank you again to everyone for making the time to be here this afternoon. The fact that you're all here tells me how deeply you care about the West Side and our city, and it also tells me that you want to see the progress that we've made continue. You know, the city is incredibly challenging. It's broken. You see it, you feel it, you understand the financial constraints that we're in. So many of you here on the West Side have lived through what we lived through in 2020 and 2021 and 2022. The work that we have changed, that we have put in to make the changes, to right the ship. You see it and feel it everywhere we go on the West Side. You know, I took office at a moment in time when I think trust and confidence in our local government was at an all-time low. But I made a promise to you all that we were going to set aside the rhetoric and focus on the results. I promised you all that I was going to show up for you because I remember when we had a council member who wasn't there for us. And I have been on the ground every day since, working shoulder to shoulder with my incredible team to do these projects, to write this comeback story for us. And I want you all to know that the weight of responsibility that I feel, the seriousness with which I take the trust and responsibility that you have placed in me is incredibly heavy. You know, this is going to be a really hard next 4 years in front of us, but it's going to be an incredible honor to get to do this with you and for you one more time. Thank you, CD11. Thank you.
Okay. What? Okay, wait. Please hold your applause. Please hold your applause. Please, Faiza, closing statement,
okay.
2 minutes.
Well, I want to thank WRAC again for hosting this spirited debate. Forums like these are so important because voters deserve to understand who we are and what we stand for. And CD11 is the most incredible, diverse district as reflected in this room. There is always more to learn about the West Side, our history, our communities, and talking to all of you has been the greatest joy of running for office for me. And if elected, I will carry the spirit of openness and community engagement into office. I want to continue to hear from every single stakeholder on the West Side so we can collectively find the best way forward for our district and our city as a whole. And I will represent the whole district, not just one neighborhood, not just the wealthiest among us, and certainly not the corporations. I don't think any of the problems that we are facing are insurmountable, but we cannot afford to have a council member who keeps choosing reactionary Band-Aid solutions and shortcuts instead of the things that we need to do. The status quo is not solving our problems. We cannot leave the housing crisis, our affordability crisis, our climate crisis, our budget crisis, rebuilding from the fires for the next generation to deal with, our children. My parents worked so hard to provide opportunities for me and my sisters, and my husband and I are working so hard to do the same for our children. I'm running for office because I want our city to provide those same opportunities to all of us. I want a city that works for all of us. And Los Angeles is a beacon of hope for so many people around the world. And in office, I promise to fight to ensure that every day we are living up to those ideals for everyone who lives here. Thank you.
Okay. Well, please hold your applause. 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 Please. Well, Jeremy, closing statement, 2 minutes.
Before you leave today, I want you to ask yourself one question. What has actually gotten better under the leadership of Tracy Park? Our streets aren't safer. Housing isn't more affordable. Businesses are closing. Families are leaving. And a neighborhood burned to the ground. When the worst disaster in history of the West Side happened, our council member did nothing. She did, however, use the fire. She did, however...
Let him finish, Jeremy.
She did, however, use the fire to make herself look better. $1 million from fire aid went to a playground? She directed more than $500,000 from Airbnb, the same company the city's suing for price gouging our neighbors. She directed that money to a nonprofit that had nothing to do with the fire. And by the way, not in our district. Not a dollar reached you. She turned our tragedy into her headline. That's not a mistake, that's a choice. She signed the forms. 4 more years of that doesn't make sense, not to me, and I don't think it makes sense to you either. I'm not a politician. I'm a neighbor who lost everything and used it to help thousands of people start to rebuild. That's who I am, and that's what I will bring to the seat. My name is Jeremy Weinberg, and I'd be honored to be your West Side representative. Thank you so much.
Before I hand it over to the RAC chair, can we just get a round of applause for our candidates for CD11? And thank you all so much for having me. If you have any story ideas or believe that ABC7 should do more coverage in the district, come find me or come reach out to us. The RAC chair has one last thing that she'd like to say.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Josh. Let's give a round of applause to Josh.
We have a lost phone.
There's a lost phone up here.
We have a lost cell phone. If you lost your cell phone, come up here.